Good evening, good morning, good day, whatever time it is that you are tuning in to Figuratively Feasting. My name is Simeon Bittman. This is the amazing Chef James Gopp.
Hello, hello.
We are here to talk about something that is near and dear to our hearts and is really one of the main reasons we're doing this podcast. Ultimately, the bottom line, the undercurrent, inspiration. What are you inspired by? What am I inspired by? Sir James, what are you inspired by? Let's get fired up together in this episode and talk about some stuff that fulfills our hearts, feeds our souls, and makes us want to push forward through crazy times, even like now.
Yeah, I'm so into that. Yeah,
Cool.
man, it's been a difficult time, I think, for all of us, and I don't think we need to talk about that too much because it's everywhere we look. And I'm hoping with this podcast that this can be an hour and a half of freedom to anybody that's listening.
I love that.
Just for a minute to just get rid of all that noise, come into our little bubble, and and be a part what we're talking about. You know, it was really nice. We just got an email from a colleague of ours,
Colleague.
like right out of the gate, and it was very nice to know that the first couple podcasts he watched all of them, and it helped inspire him and reignite a fire that had been a little bit smothered. So, I mean, yeah, let's talk about some things here, man. Like, there's so much things in life that I've been inspired by people and our experiences. But really, we were kicking around an idea about, because we always have there's so many different ideas to capture for these podcasts.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out which direction we're going to go. How do we collect this little idea, that little idea, and then make a whole hour and a half segment on it, which is really easy to do because we both love to talk.
Yeah.
Lately I've been in a little bit of a funk, much like all of us. And Simeon had a really great experience recently, this past Sunday, of just pushing through whatever, just the normal type of things he could have been doing. Just show up to work, do your thing. Instead, he decided to kick it up to about, level 11 and really bring it. And that got me really jazzed. That got me really thinking about, wow, man, that's a beautiful thing to witness. Somebody really tapping in to that inspiration, that something inside of us that's hard to describe. I don't think it has a name or anything. So after listening to that, I was like, this was a podcast you wanted to do. You were the one who was spearheading it. I wholeheartedly agreed. So without further ado, Simeon, where do you want to start, man?
I would like to start with this past Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah. I got up at 3 a.m. and I headed out to work. Well, I made some coffee first. I headed out to work, and I had been planning doing this for some time, but kept letting it slip between my fingers. It was...
Why?
I thought I was too busy. I didn't think I had the energy for it. I thought that my priorities needed to be elsewhere in my kitchen, in the kitchen that I run, and that I needed to be preserving my energy and maintaining my focus. I was playing it safe. I was playing it comfortable, which is smart. That was smart. However, you know how that goes.
Yeah,
Can't
man.
do that for too long before you start feeling a little stifled, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And something needs to happen. It's a difficult time. And so with the difficult time, there are a lot of feelings inside of me that get stuck. They get caught. I feel anxious. I feel sad that I can't live the life that I'm used to living. I feel disconnected.
Yeah.
The work is difficult because there's all kinds of new protocols, and every day there's this low-level weight of stress about this thing and where it's going to go and what's happening.
Right.
And it needed to get out. All that stuff needed to get out of me. So got to work.
Well, first, I just have to interject for a second.
Yeah.
I love the voice memo you sent me at 3:30. I'm like, oh my God, did this guy go to sleep at all, or what's the story? And it was, dude, I'm going to be honest with you. It was like bordering on the line of the ramblings of a madman. It was like a bunch of just the tone was very
It was like monotone.
Totally monotone, totally like in a specific zone and just talking about like, yeah, like crazy shit. And I was like, whoa, all right.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, man, like people are trying to hold us down. They're trying to quelch our voice. Didn't I say that?
Something like that. And I was like, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand you're a little worried.
I was waiting to hear something about how you fell into whatever you decided to do that day.
Nah, so I got there. I lit some fires outside. I lit up an Infernio, and I lit up a big bonfire. And I went to the kitchen. I got out the coolers and the equipment and some ingredients and things that I had set aside. Brought them down there, connected the hose just in case. And I got to cooking.
Yeah.
And I was out there cooking outside as the sun was rising, as the first birds were chirping. And it was beautiful, man. It was a beautiful thing. And It felt really good. As the sun came up, people started noticing what was going on down there. I sent out the message to invite folks to come and hang out with me. I had mulled some cider. I had a pot of coffee out there. And they came out. People were hanging out with me while I was cooking. And I put out a really awesome brunch that morning. On my own, just did the thing. Right. Pushed really hard to get that brunch out. It was a big meal. A lot of service, a lot of dishes. Needed to look pretty. Broke it down.
Right.
Went back into the kitchen and felt really good.
But, there's a big section of the story that you're not telling also is that, oh, yeah, great. He created a fire. He made brunch by himself and pushed it out. And, wow, that was cause for celebration. That lit a fire inside of me. As cool as that is, let's also fill a little some folks in here about what your schedule has been like, your work life. You've been a little short-staffed. I mean, this is the problem with work right now. There's a lot of jobs available, but people aren't taking them.
Yeah.
So for you, go ahead. I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, for me, man, that's another thing I didn't talk about at the beginning. It was another thing that's just been creating anxiety and stress in me. We're understaffed. It's a lot of work that we take on in order to maintain the particular standard that I want us to live up to. And I just got angry. If this place is going to try to hold me down, if COVID and all that's going to try to hold me down from putting out really awesome food and doing my thing and having a beautiful work environment, and we're going to be understaffed, and I'm going to have people on the crew who are, difficult to work with right now because of the stress of what's happening, I'm just going to push right through it. I'm just going to carry the team. I'm going to carry this meal. And I'm just going to get fired up and do that. And if that somehow inspires the people around me, great. If not, I just needed to get the lead out.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And I think we've all this is speaking to our restaurant family, brothers and sisters. I think we've all been there, and we've had those moments, and that is incredibly inspirational. And not only that, you worked several days, long days leading up to that, and you're working through many days until I think your next day off is on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And, Simeon, let's be honest, he's not a young man anymore. Take a look at him, right? He's got a wife. He's got 3 kids, right? And instead of actually spending the time with his loving family tonight on his birthday, he's decided to choose to spend the evening with me. So I appreciate you, again, going a little further. And I think because of that, and also that it's your birthday, why don't you reach down to that table, that corner there behind that box, and you'll see a bag, a little present for you down there. I didn't know what to get, but this seemed the only. Read the bag first.
Liquid courage.
Yeah, I figured you need as much as that is, as much of that as you can get.
Ooh.
And so this is a nice bottle. I haven't tried it, but I figured campfire.
Yeah.
That was something special between you and I.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks, man.
Happy birthday, brother.
Thank you very
Enjoy
much.
Help,
I appreciate that.
Help you get through the rest of the week. Help you get through till Sunday.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
So how am I supposed to? I want to drink this right now.
You want to drink it right now? Go ahead, open it up.
Come on, man. Yeah. This isn't a time for me or for any of us to let ourselves get knocked down and stay down. We're going to get some hits. A lot of people are receiving punches and hits in the form of furlough, difficult times with money, uncertainty about the future. Those are just punches. We get knocked down and we get up and we're fired up. You get punched in the face, be like, good. I'm happy I just got punched in the face.
Right.
Take that hit, jump up and be ready.
Yep.
Use the energy that just got into you. If it's anger or whatever it is, that just like from the pain or from whatever it is of getting knocked down, get yourself up and get ready to freaking rock, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a great quote in the movie. I think it was the movie Rocky V, I want to say. So it's not about, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Oh, nice.
So, I mean, that's just sort of how it is, bobbing and weaving and learning how to take it on the chin as you continue to go through. Do you need another glass for your whiskey?
Mm-hmm.
How about one of these little rocks jobs?
Thanks.
Here.
Would you like some too?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. It's your gift, but I'm happy to drink your alcohol as you come into my house and drink it every week. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
You owe me.
Big time. Big time. This is.
Remember that time I gave you my 45-cent shopping bag?
Yeah.
Yeah, you pretty much owed me a lifetime of booze for that.
Yeah, that was a mistake. Wow, interesting. I want to breathe a little bit. You know what? I might want to put a little bit of water in here to open it up. That's the old trick. I mean, there's many people that just want to be hardcore and drink whiskey right out of the bottle, which does the trick when you need it to. But if you're really going to enjoy it, if you're not going to do rocks, because rocks can water it down too quick, definitely a little bit of splash of water on there. And for the folks that are out there that are whiskey or bourbon connoisseurs, you already know this. But for the folks that maybe are getting into it or want to, expand their enjoyment, definitely put a little ice cube on it, put a little bit of water. It helps open everything up. Really, it truly does.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Because I get that thought like, oh, I'm just watering it down.
Yeah.
But I guess it's blooming it, right? Is that what
Yeah,
they
that
say?
is smoky as hell.
Is it?
Which is interesting. Yeah, so I guess, it is a whiskey.
Campfire.
It's not necessarily it's not a bourbon, it's a whiskey. So there's definitely very peaty, too. A little that smoky peat action, that rotten wood going on. So.
I like it.
Yeah, that'll be nice sipping. That's not a drink out of the bottle. That's a drink out of the bottle, wake up on the floor the next morning and wonder, how did I get here? Yeah, I mean, so going through all this type of stuff, I think, for me at least, I thought...
Talk about you, all right? Everything comes back to you anyway.
Well, normally, yes. It causes you, during these times, because I have admittedly been stuck in a little bit of a funk. Seeing Simeon get inspired me. And then it starts to it's hard when you're either managing or a business owner or something like that for a long period of time. You don't have those same type of, it's hard to find mentors. It's hard to find experiences back when you were like a young buck or a young lass, to be able to look back or still have those experiences now. So it caused me to look backwards a little bit and start to crack into a little bit of stories and experiences that helped me as a cook come up, and other individuals that we met in life too that played a pretty influential impact.
That's awesome.
On my life.
Yeah.
So.
Tell me about some.
No.
Tell me something.
No.
Yeah, right. All right, so thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, James, for being so forthcoming tonight.
Yeah, so I started looking back into my life about certain pockets that I found inspiration, certain times where I thought, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening, or I'm just going to force myself to get through this point in time. But back then, too, I often think, too, for whatever reason, I must have been maybe being younger and a little bit more naive or something. Everything was possible. That sounds so cliche to say that, but I think that's a big part of being young and a little bit naive.
Yeah, you're like a lot more careless. You're just like, screw it. I want to do this. I'll just do it.
Yeah, and you don't. In a lot of ways, I guess you don't really have much to lose.
Yeah, right.
There was a period of time. Yeah, so basically, when I think back to parts like when I started this company, of how it all just happened so fast. And literally, and I may have touched on this before, it all started with a phone call for a pretty high-profile client on a Sunday, and I had Lyme disease, and it was just like, ugh. I had no idea. Like, it literally had no equipment, no anything.
What season was it?
This was in the springtime. Springtime, and it was, I just had left a job I was at for a long period of time, and it was an acquaintance that I met. The person that called me was an acquaintance that I met through that company, and literally wanted us to come and do an event on Saturday. I had Lyme disease. I had no idea at that point. I had something like 105-degree fever. I was like shivering in a blanket in front of a heater on the other side of the phone, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this is, okay. So then I called my cousin, bought all the stuff, I told him now is the time. We've been wanting to make a sort of Inferno or like an open air oven. And,
Okay, wait. So, all right. So you guys had been talking, and he wanted to build because he's a welder, and he was like pretty skilled at that. And you knew that you wanted to eventually have a company that used that kind of equipment. So you kind of had a secret weapon in your cousin. Or what? What were you going to say?
Well, the funny part is no. It was, I never wanted to have my own business.
Oh.
I left this company and I was pretty much burnt out. I've gone pretty hard throughout the years at different restaurants.
I know. I remember watching you or like hearing about you and stuff.
Yeah.
How hard you would go, like real hard.
Yeah. And to the point where there wasn't any, balance, whatever that actually means. I don't think I figured that out yet.
Huh.
But you
Yeah,
go really
I hear that.
hard and then you burn out.
Yeah.
You get sort of disenchanted with things. And I'm the type of person where if I'm going someplace, I literally can't have someone tell me no. So there's a way to be able to give me constructive feedback. I appreciate that. But if it's just when I know something in my bones is the right move to do.
So is that what happened in that moment? Like, why did you say yes if you were burnt out, sick, cold, and feverish?
So I left that job for the first time in my life with not having a plan. I've always been very adamant about, well, that's not true. I did that once before. I got out of a long-term relationship, and I just needed some mental health stuff, which we should have probably went on a little bit, talked about that in the last podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I took a trip to Italy for 2 weeks by myself.
Yeah,
And,
you did mention it, but I'd love to hear more about that sometime. I'm going to take a note so we talk about that next time.
Okay.
Or at another time.
Another juncture. So,
Yeah.
But this was also, I had some idea. I had some money put away. Same thing when I left the shop. I didn't really have a plan. Like, I just knew I needed to get out of this environment. I was in this toxic place for some time, and it had worn me down, and I had allowed it to wear me down to a point where it was really, really, really unhealthy for me. Not a good place. So when that phone call came in, considering it was for, as I think back, it's kind of interesting. Had it not been for the person it was for, would I have actually done it? Maybe not. Maybe it's actually no, I don't have that stuff. Considering who this person was, you sort of like, I'd be a fool not to make this happen. So I did it. Just really almost.
That's crazy, though.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. Because
Yeah.
you had no equipment.
No
so
equipment, no
you could be like, no, like, I definitely am not going to risk messing up for this particular client.
Yeah.
That would be
Or
really
even-
dumb.
But to actually be able to cook a meal for that client and being it for that's their birthday.
Dude, it was her birthday?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is, I don't know. To me, this is just an epic, amazing freaking story. Like, unbelievable. Anyways, please continue, man.
Well, yeah, which is insane. It was like that in that moment. If I didn't do it, I would have been kicking myself for the rest of my life. And it was incredibly hard in that moment. Having Lyme disease, had lost 20 pounds during it. I just felt like weak and sick all the time, super feverish. And again, at that point, I had no clue that I even had Lyme disease.
Wow.
So it was really a feat, but also the fact that the entire company was really built in 5 days. Because when you and I go and do an event, as we just did, recently, a wedding, we had an oven, we had 2 tables, table frames. At that stage in the game, the beginning birthday party we're talking about, we didn't have our produce shelves, our back shelves, but with an oven and 2 tables, that's like a pretty good. That you can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
With that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the foundation, the structure of the company. It was crazy. And then just other people called up that I had known again through other, just through acquaintances wanting to do a party, and I did it. And I think it was probably like the third or fourth party into it. It's like, oh my gosh, this is actually profitable, and I can make money doing this, and I feel really good. But it is funny though when you're in an environment for a while where, and I think all of us, and this is something we all need to be careful with in our life. It's, when you're in a conversation with folks, perfect strangers in the street, the conversation will go to, hey, so how about the weather? And it's not like it's usually, I would say 7 to 8 times out of 10, it's probably because the weather has been a little bit ridiculously, maybe too much rain or it's getting cold or whatever. So it baffles me when people in the Berkshires are like, oh my God, it's so cold outside, isn't it? It's like, well, yeah, we live in the Berkshires. It is a rugged place during the winter to live. Yeah. So, we need to be more optimistic, like don't go down that route of, the reason I'm bringing this up is at the end of the events, when I worked at this other company, we'd all go out, get some drinks, and we'd commiserate being the operative term here, over what happened and how the odds were stacked against us and all this other stuff. So really for the first handful of events, and actually for like the first full season, because I don't really count that first year as a real season, when we all went out and got drinks, it was almost like we had nothing to talk about because everything went so well. And everything was like it went off without a hitch. Wow. So then it took us a while almost to relearn all of our, it almost like to relearn how to celebrate without having a dirty sort of cast shadow over us. Wow. But also, it's like the other weird thing about this time in COVID is that a thing for me, you had your event that you did. You did this beautiful brunch.
Yeah, and I want to get back to yours too, at soon.
Oh, well. We're talking about, for me, one of the things that recently inspired me, and it's something I didn't even know that I needed, was 2 weeks ago. Yeah. You and I asked Simeon to come along and help me for a small micro wedding. It was our first micro wedding of the season, something we haven't done. And generally, we don't take smaller parties because there's so much gear to haul out. Basically for us, cooking for a 20 or 30 person party is the same gear that we got to pull out to really cook for like a 75 or 100 person party. So it's a lot of work. And and the most expensive part of any events is the staff. You got to pay for these people. So it takes a lot of people to unload the gear. But then even though you might need 2 to 3 cooks, it's like you need 6 cooks or 6 bodies to unload the truck. So anyhow, point is we did a wedding for a lovely couple.
Yeah, they were really great.
Yeah, and the whole
families were really good.
Yeah, the whole family was really sweet.
So good.
And to me, it was a tremendous amount of work. And we almost got the truck stuck. I almost got the truck stuck. We pulled into this place.
Pulled up. That was
and started to get buried. And thankfully, I know how to drive a truck.
Yeah,
so
very well.
Thank you. I was able to get us down to where we needed. But it was a lot of work to unload everything. We set everything up. And there's still a lot of work to do. During, Simeon was busting ass. It was great. During the cocktail hour, you went and assembled the beautiful stationary table. You put together the 2 brides' boards, and then you were out and just cranking. The whole thing was cranking. Yeah. And to me, this was the point of for so many years since I've been going so hard, I've conditioned and I've trained myself to accept satisfaction or praise or happiness in one certain way, I guess. That's one thing I'm starting to understand about myself is through the happiness of my clients. It's been such a part of me where we go so hard in the summertime doing about 35 events a year. And to hear, to every single person, not that I need, I guess, everyone at a party to tell me that what we're doing is amazing or how amazing I am or whatever. But the only thing I care about is if the client's happy, to see them happy, enjoying themselves, just completely satisfied. Yeah. That's the thing, because you lay everything out. And again, to the culinary family, you know that when you're putting together dishes, putting together nights, and even just cooking a dinner for your friends, maybe your friend's birthday. Yeah. What that feels like to care for someone so deeply that you want them to be satisfied. Yeah. So,
and more times than not, when you're in that zone, the food that you make is freaking awesome, and it's received in a really positive way. Yeah. And so when you're making banger food, you know it. Yeah, you're this is going to be so good. I feel so good. This food's going to be so good. And then they love it.
Yeah, it's like the symbiotic relationship.
Right. And it's so imagine if one of those elements is not in there anymore, like what you're saying. Imagine the client's not there suddenly.
Yeah.
So you're cooking all this meal with love, or you're thinking about all these great ideas of things you could do for clients, and there's no clients to be making food for.
Yeah, no one to make happy. So that was something I think that I realized that I really, really needed. So yeah, it's a crazy.
I know that was great, man. I saw you I mean, in a lot of situations when if you were getting sort of doted over that way at other events in the past, you'd kind of be like, yeah, thanks, But it was like, I mean, also these guys were really charming and they were very authentic in their praise too. And they really wanted to connect with you a lot.
Yeah.
And it was the environment for it too, which I think is an advantage of these micro weddings.
Yes.
It's a more intimate environment.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
we could be more a part of the experience with them, which I think is really special for them.
Yeah, and us, I think,
And
too,
us,
because we're
yeah.
able to do things, for like that plated first course we did. It's more intricate components to a dish. It's much easier to do that for 14 people than 200 people.
Yeah.
You gotta trim it down. It's not that I put a lot of thought and effort into designing dishes that work for that size party.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
It's nice to get a little crazier, when the time calls for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was awesome, man. So let me ask you just a question real quick, just jumping back to that first event,
sure.
that kind of started everything.
Yeah.
Did you get together with your cousin after the event and go hang out somewhere and have a drink and talk about it? Or did you just go home and die for a week, or what happened?
I think what happened was, I remember it was really interesting actually receiving the payment for that. Money it doesn't mean the world to me. It obviously is a good thing, but I remember receiving the payment and that time being because that was the first payment I received for my at that point it wasn't even a company. It was just my services and knowing that we did a good job. And I think everyone, it was my cousin and a very close wedding planner friend of mine, Magdalena, who, she literally was sewing table cloths, and she built. Actually, do you know that you used it on the table for the stationary appetizer at that wedding? There's this a set of birch logs that are strung together. She made that for that event.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
that's how
thing's a lot of
long that's
history.
been around?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
It's well built too, because that thing's been banged around a lot.
Yeah. It's so that's 5 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Nice work, Magda.
Yeah, nice job. Yeah, so it was crazy. I think honestly at the end of it we were all exhausted. I probably asked if they all wanted to go out, and I think, because Keith is not a guy that he doesn't beat around the bush. He gets right to the point. He's like, no, I'm effing beat. And then Magdalena, I think she's the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, we just, I think a couple of weeks, I think we did a total of maybe 5 or 6 events the first year.
Huh. So that night you're driving home.
It was a brunch
down.
thing. So
Oh, it was a brunch thing.
yeah.
So you broke it down. You took the equipment with you?
I did. It was,
So you had
I
a
think it
hitch
had-
or something?
No, actually everything fit in the back. At that time I had a Ford F-150 pickup truck.
All right.
I think with an 8-foot bed, maybe 6 or 8-foot bed. Yeah, so everything got packed into the back of there, and then I drove home. And I was working at a farm at that point in time.
Oh, that's when you were still there.
Yeah,
Got
at
it.
Taft Farms. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, crazy, dude. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, so it was. And so things like that,
So
to me,
cool.
the inspirational part is, a great team of people, that you can rely on. Those are without my cousin during that time and without Magdalena during that time, none of that would have worked, and that's it's good to be around good people.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So it was enough for you to feel inspired enough to continue on the following season?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so how did that all go down? Did you start getting calls and booked up and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting calls? Or what was happening?
So really, let's see, the first, that first type of season, there was, as I said, maybe 5 or 6 events that we did, and they were all just, one client. It was really weird, man. When I left this company I was working for, as I've mentioned before, I was a catering manager and a lead cook at another company. Two clients when I left had actually tracked me down afterwards, called me up, and were so disappointed that I was not going to be there for their wedding. They both canceled.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, that's extreme. Because now I think about that stuff. I mean, we've had people come and go that work here. I mean, I'm so integrated into the business. For me, connecting with the clients means so much. And I have to have a connection with clients. And if we don't have a connection, then I send them in a different direction, because it should be an absolutely memorable experience for one of the most, well, probably in a lot of cases, the biggest day of their life.
Yeah.
And a pretty substantial financial investment. So it's got to be more than just a business transaction at that point. So one of the clients that came in at the end of that season had broke their contract with that company because they didn't have, the guy that came in after me, as it was mentioned to me, did not necessarily have the best, I don't know if it's customer service skills or just really the care for the product. So they felt a little, I guess they didn't feel as happy as they wanted to after spending this sum of money. So they tracked me down. I remember I was working on the farm, and I got like 3 or 4 missed calls by this number. The 3 calls, there was no voicemail. There was one voicemail in a frantic message about wanting to know if I could cater their wedding.
Whoa.
And it was coming up in like 2 weeks or something like that.
Oh, you took it, didn't you?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely I did.
Yeah.
And, but also like, we did a tasting for that client. And actually, honestly, I don't even
You did a tasting too?
No, I'm trying to think at the other company if I did a tasting. If I did
Oh,
a tasting,
you
actually, I
had
don't
done
think
the
I did a
tasting.
tasting with them. Actually, I think it was all through phone calls and emails. But we had a connection through that way. And but just to be able to be on the other end of that phone call, to be able to talk this person down from this panic attack essentially that they were having.
So what did you do? Did you just take the rein? Like you just took charge when you talked to him? You're like, I got you.
He was something along, like, just don't worry. Absolutely, we'll come and do the event. You're in good hands. And I could literally feel the energy, like a sigh of relief.
Whoa.
So, at that point, Magdalena, she had left that same company we were working with, and she didn't really know, what she was going to do. So I know she wanted to build her own company. I think they were still sort of percolating those thoughts at that point. So we sort of did a deal, or brokered a deal, where she would staff the events for us and manage our events, and we would kind of suggest her to clients. So she jumped right in, took control of all the rentals, and ran the party, and it was awesome, man. It was so much fun. They had fond. I think the story was they actually met at Burning Man.
Oh, really?
Or at least it was a big part of their life. So at the end, one of the grooms surprised the other groom with this like epic fire dance party. Like at the end, it was amazing. This guy came out on stilts, juggling flaming torches.
Wow.
Another guy was coming out on like a BMX bike with like flaming torches all over the wheels, and did this whole thing with this lady laid in the ground. He was like bouncing all around her with these torches, and it was an awesome. It was an awesome spectacle, and it was even more a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yeah. So, like, what were you thinking? I mean, where were you feeling at that time?
I was high, because that was the point where it was, wow, okay, this is really fantastic. We're able to make people's dreams come true, and there's no one there to hold me back or tell me no.
Yeah.
And this could actually be a real business.
Oh,
man. That was
man.
super exciting.
Yeah.
And at
so
that point,
inspiring to even just hear that.
Well, thank you. And I mean, at that point, when I was at the farm, I really started considering at that point really creating my own business. So it became this drive that I had at that point. I had to be at the farm at 6 a.m. in the morning, so I'd get up at 4 o'clock and put in an hour or an hour and a half into a website. Created and did a bunch of photo shoots. Captured pictures, took some pictures from. That wedding we did for those two gentlemen there, and and just really did a lot of research on what the best things were to do, and did a lot of promotional events. Just cut our teeth getting into the ring and getting recognized with things.
Hell yeah. And I remember you advertising an event at Taft Farms. You must have still been working there.
Exactly right. Yeah. That was crazy how that whole thing worked out, because there were so many interesting pieces that went into the dinner. And they were so gracious to let us use the facility. And it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And at that point, though, it's funny because that was our very first event, and we couldn't give tickets away. I mean, it was amazing. Like, literally offering people up to these tickets. And everyone was busy or whatever. And I think we ended up getting maybe 50 or 60 people to show up. We definitely lost money on that event, for sure.
Yeah.
But it was so special because that particular field, when in the summertime, as it sort of cools, it's in this little bit of a valley. So this really thick haze sort of lingers over the crops. And that particular night, there was a supermoon that came up, and it was amazing. And then also there was a neighboring ski resort that I think it was right around the end of July or something. They were having some sort of festival, and they set up fireworks that you could see. So we got that part of a bonus sort of coup. But people came down in like hay wagon rides. I mean, it was a really fantastic event. I mean, and then flash forwarding, kind of jumping. Well, what were you going to say, something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just pulling out for a sec because what I'm thinking about is how both of us have gotten used to this level of production and this uniqueness and this creativity about that kind of work that you have generated and created and like thought through and kind of like developed certain systems for. And I feel like we're sort of talking about it very matter-of-factly.
Yeah.
And that there's probably people out there who are like, wait, what? Like, you didn't just call a catering company and rent a couple of frickin' 6-foot tables and like a quick oven and plug it in and like, some propane tanks or whatever.
Right.
Wait. You had equipment built?
Yeah.
And you're working, by the way, so I'm sure you know this already, but just to be totally clear, this is working over fire. That's it. Yeah. There's not fuel.
Right.
There might be some fuel used to like start some of the fires, but like sometimes not even that. Like it's just wood and steel and
so I
inspiration and sweat and energy and creativity and art and beauty. Like, dude,
well,
it's next level shit. And I'm sorry, but like you were the first one to like bring it to the level that it needed to be brought. Before that, it was happening, but it wasn't happening in a way that was true magic. Like, you made it into magic, dude.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And I think that, by you tapping into what you did on Sunday, there's something about that we've gone through in the events you've worked with me at. Is it's almost something that supersedes the process. It's almost like it's incredibly hard work.
Yeah.
So you're challenging yourself in a way to maybe prove something.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot easier ways to prepare some of these things.
Yeah.
And it could be, something as simple as, we talk to this all the time, like cooking potatoes on site, or there's a lot of stuff that could be prepped up ahead of time that we just don't do. And it's just like, for me, I guess there's a way I'm always like, there's a darker side of me sitting in the shadows, just saying like, well, let's push it a little further. Let's see where their breaking point is. Let's see where your breaking point is,
Yeah.
And to constantly look back at that little thing in the shadows and be like, not there yet, baby.
Yeah,
We're
dude.
not there yet.
That's what's up.
Keep digging.
Yes.
Yeah. So, so talk to me about a little bit of your, we've heard about my sort of trail inspiration. There's many things. It's a huge topic, but I could talk about myself all day. But I do have a very large interest in you as well. This Canadian tuxedo or Texas tuxedo wearing fellow today. what made him into who he is, and all the different opportunities that you may have had, like being pushed up against the ropes, broken. Whatever. What made you push through? Where did your love come from? Enlighten the folks, please.
Thanks. Well, it's funny. I find I'm really hard on myself. So there have been times when I got knocked down and fell down and stayed down, and I like really like destroyed myself for doing that, for allowing myself to do that. So I frame a certain part of my life, like formative years, pre-teens and stuff, as being a time when I wasn't pushing myself and enabling myself to not do a lot. And when I reached a certain age, I guess it was probably 20. Actually, sorry, it was 17. I realized that I was messing around, and that while I did want to continue messing around and having fun in that way, I needed to develop something inside me. There was like a fire that I didn't know what to do with, and I hadn't discovered work yet.
So,
Or at least I had done jobs,
yeah.
but I hadn't been like motivated by them. I hadn't been inspired by them. I didn't think that that's how I was going to be able to channel this fire, this like energy building in me that was like, I have to just, I don't know, I just have to get it out. And but I couldn't. This is all looking back at it because I didn't quite understand that's what was happening inside me at the time.
But can you recall, because there has to be a catalyst.
Yeah, so
to
I got a
that.
job washing dishes.
Okay.
So after my
Where?
senior year of high school, before going to college, I got a job at Church Street Cafe in Lenox, Massachusetts. The owners were friends of my folks, and they were friends of my folks' friends, people who just like all came up together in the Berkshires. That was my parents and their friends, and I grew up around these people, so I loved them dearly. I got a job at the Church Street Cafe, which was like the spot to be.
That was a big deal.
It was the spot to be
Lennox
at.
was bumping at that point, like Zinc too, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that around that time?
It was before Zinc. The cook there, the guy who went on to open Zinc and other restaurants in Lenox, was a line cook at Church Street when I was there.
Oh, Jason? Is that his
Yeah.
name? Yeah. Legend.
Yeah.
In this area. Yeah.
Totally. So he was a cook at Church Street. Like I remember hanging out with him behind the dumpster smoking pot. You might want to cut
You're
that
a
out.
bad boy.
But I'll
No,
let
it's
you figure
okay. I
that
mean,
out.
wild child.
My
right?
pot, actually.
Yeah. So yeah.
But anyway, so it was a job it was a job dishwashing. And I can't tell you, man, like I got in there, the dishes started stacking up. It was busy. It was loud. There was stuff to be done. It was like, I loved it. I just immediately totally fell in love with it, with the pace, with like diving in, with getting wet and hot and sweaty and yucky. And like, I just loved it a lot.
Huh.
And then also I realized like there was this guy who was a line cook, and he said, you know, the next step after dishwashing is prep cook, right? Like, would you ever want to do that? And I was like, I don't know. I just sort of enjoy doing dishes. And also I was bussing tables too, which I also found a lot of fun. It'd get really busy, and it was like, all right, we got to switch these tables over real fast. You got to clear them, you got to switch them, and then they have to be ready for, like, there's a line of people, there's reservations, like, let's go. And I'd be like, all right, let's go.
Yeah. Right. I would love to see a teenage Morty.
Yeah, I had
floating around the.
I had a shaved sides, and I had blue and yellow dreadlocks.
Get out!
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
It reminds me, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you guys, but I got it right now.
Oh no.
Yeah, so the very first time I met Simeon, correct me if I've mentioned this. So Simeon in his younger days, I thought, bared a striking resemblance to Adrian Brody, if you guys remember who he is. And I remember saying to him, just to kind of be friendly and kind of connect on something, I was like, hey, man, have I ever tell you look a lot like Adrian Brody? And I immediately saw that look in your face, like you've probably heard that a lot. And it's just like this like look. You're like, and then I remember saying like, oh, or maybe it's that he looks a lot like you or something. That's when the damage has already been done. But the reason I think about the dreadlocks brought it to, did you ever see that like Saturday Night Live skit where he came out and introduced, who the hell was it? It was Shaggy.
Oh yeah.
And he was like talking in like
Nice.
this Rastafarian accent
Was he?
and like dreadlocks and all this
Nice.
stuff. And it was like, I think as the story goes, he was banned from SNL because of that. Like, because I told him they didn't want him to do that. And he did it
Oh, really?
anyways. And I just think of you.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's funny. There's
Cool.
like a song recently came up or something, some Rastafarian music. Like, all right, this is my shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Hell
like,
yeah.
oh. So anyhow, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just was fired up by dishwashing in the back of the house scene. And I just jumped into, I thought about the prep work thing and I realized that I wanted to do it. And the dude was like, all right, so if you want to do it, you have to be like real serious about it. You know, like this is a big deal. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So he'd be like, here's like 10 bunches of parsley. I want you to chop them real fine, put them in a towel, get the towel wet, and squeeze it out so that like most of the green comes out and you're essentially draining some of the flavor and like refreshing the parsley at the same time. And then I want you to finish mincing it. So it's like beautiful, mild flavored, super green parsley. And I was like, that's fucking cool. Like, I want to do that. And he's like, and I want you to figure out how to chop really fast. So I started learning, like, that was the first knife skill that I learned is how to chop real fast with, like, 2 hands.
Did anyone show you how to
And,
do
like,
that?
da-da-da-da-da.
Or
Yeah, I
through
think somebody must have shown me.
through observation or something?
Yeah, like, if you're doing it fast, this is how you go fast, you know? And you make sure you don't, you know, your knife has to be sharp and you can't miss a spot because otherwise you'll end up with some that's, like, powder and others still have chunks.
Yeah.
So you have to like work the pile very evenly and distribute. And I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
I just thought it was real cool. Like
That's so
deveining
interesting.
shrimp. I thought deveining shrimp was so cool because it was like gross and disgusting and all that. But it was like rugged to me. It was
Isn't
just
it so
like,
interesting that stuff like that really spoke to you and might not speak to a lot of other prep cooks or dishwashers that come through the wash.
yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Like, what for whatever reason, there's something else there that maybe either you know or you don't know that's deep inside of you that resonated with that. Maybe
Yeah.
was it an experience? Is it in your genes? Was it something that happened to you or something you saw in a movie that you don't even remember? It's like they have with comedians. I can't remember what they call it. They call it something specific where they go and they listen to a lot of other comics routines. And then all of a sudden they will tell their same joke, but they don't realize that they stole it from a comedian.
Yeah.
They call it something specific. So maybe it's
Huh.
a case of that. I'd be interesting to kind of find that out.
Yeah, like I wonder if I'm pretty sure actually that it was just seeing how intense it was in the kitchen and seeing the chef there who I admired. Like as a kid, he was like this giant Santa Claus figure to me. He was always super sweet. And we'd go to the restaurant and eat as a family, you know, when I was a kid. And he was like just so welcoming. He'd always come to the table and hang out. And just like that whole, the environment there of, it was like we were coming to their house and eating, and they were going to work real hard for us.
Yeah.
You know, and then to actually see how hard they were working and how serious it was back there. Like to see all these young cooks and people who were just a little bit older than me, who were just like serious and focused on something and were like not about to mess around, and like tiny little things. Like if I got that parsley wrong, I would hear about it. Like it was a serious mistake if the parsley wasn't perfectly evenly cooked or cut, if it was still a little bit wet, if like the green didn't all come out. Like that was a mistake. I would hear about it, you know? It was like, okay, like this is a serious thing. You don't mess around in here.
Yeah.
And like that's cool. I like that. I just like the seriousness of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just what I needed. Like I had just come out of high school. I don't know, man. I was sort of just a big goofball. I got lucky enough to get to college, but like barely.
Yeah.
And I guess I just must have resonated with the seriousness of it. It was like, all right, if there's something inside me that wanted to focus, that, like I said, wanted to have like a fire to release.
Right.
You know, like I was feeling lost.
Right.
And there it was. It was right there for me.
So when it comes to, I mean, obviously in our lives, we have many people that inspire us professionally and personally.
Yeah.
So would it be safe to say, I mean, we'll get into this a little bit later, but I mean, would you consider this big Santa Claus figure,
Clayton?
Clayton?
Yeah, I'll just say his name. Yeah.
To be,
Yeah, he
one
was.
of your, one of your top
Yeah.
mentors.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, he sort of got you inspired. He got you fired up about cooking.
Yep. And even when I saw his like evil side, like even when I saw his stressed out screaming side, I still thought he was awesome.
Right.
Like I had only seen his sweet, happy, like, "Hey, Simmy, how are you?" side. But in the kitchen, like I remember messing up as a busser one night. I don't remember what I was doing. I think I don't remember what happened. Maybe I wasn't coming to the kitchen when they were calling, like runners, runners, and I like wasn't coming because I was running and bussing or something. And I just remember like standing up in the kitchen, getting into the kitchen, and him just being like, "Where are you? What's going on? Like, come on, let's go." And I was like,
must have been
yeah.
like, well, yeah, but was there a level of like the dad yelling at you?
Maybe.
Like, because I know that's, I mean, for me, it only happened to just a few times in life when you really, really like somebody and you really, really respect them. And then one day they get really mad and you're like, oh my God, dad is yelling or whatever that, you know, sort of reaction is. And it makes you feel not sick to your stomach, but like makes you feel deeply disturbed and then very disappointed in yourself because you weren't there to do something to protect that person, to have their back.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
really
definitely a piece of that. Yeah. And I think in somebody like giving it to you, like Clayton, there was a certain vibe in there that was like, I know that you can do this. Like, where were you? Like, I've been counting on you. I know that I can count on you. What's going on? What happened?
Right. So did that trigger?
So it was like, it was like, I know you can do this. Like, what's happening?
Right. So did that trigger something inside of you, or you were like, I'm not gonna F that up next time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you didn't want to upset him, or you didn't want to.
I didn't want to feel that feeling like I messed up. Like I didn't like that feeling. I didn't want to feel like, I was taking a moment where I wasn't taking this seriously.
Yeah.
And like and I was gonna get away with it unless there was somebody there who was like, "Where were you?" Because I immediately was like, "Yeah, I know. I took a couple extra seconds over there to shoot the shit with this other busser, and it was during the middle of a huge rush."
Yeah. Right.
And if I had skipped that conversation, even though it was 30 seconds long, it was 30 seconds too much, man. Like in those kinds of situations, you don't mess around. You're focused. You got to go.
Yeah.
30 seconds is like 30 seconds longer that a plate's getting cold, you know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's interesting. So now we've touched a little bit on your professional life. What about in your personal life? I mean, is there anyone that you can think of that you had a deep level of respect, that you learned something from? Because also, your work or your life is just not work.
Yeah.
So what is...
My cousin Mark, he was around, he's part of my life, like really big from, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 until like 16, 17. That was a stretch. I mean, we always stayed kind of close but distant after that. But during those years, he was a cousin of mine. He used to come up from the city. He was a set designer for movies. And he bought a little cabin and plopped it on my parents' property. He would come up on the weekends and clear the land around the cabin that he bought and hang out. And his wife, who was my cousin too, obviously, would come up and hang out. And
Wait a minute. He was your cousin?
So she was really my cousin, and then she married him. And so I guess he was my cousin, right?
It's not how it works, because that would be some weird level of incest. But by marriage, he is sort of like your cousin kind of thing.
All right. I guess I always called him Cousin Mark, but
that's okay. I mean, it's Cheshire. So go ahead.
So Cousin Mark.
Cousin Mark, yeah.
Yeah.
Cousin.
He was a badass, man. He was like, first of all, he was like a really good-looking dude, and he was older, so he was like muscular and like just strong and like fit. And when he came up, his work ethic was captivating to me. I had never really seen somebody like that before, who just like released this amount of energy to actually move nature, like to move landscapes with his bare hands or with one hand tool. Yeah. So as he was clearing that property, like he literally made a yard all around the side and the back and the other side of this cottage with his bare hands. He didn't use a bobcat. He didn't use anything.
Wow.
He had like a saw and a shovel. And the dude just dug up the roots, cut them all down, and just basically went ape shit on this property every weekend.
How old was like how much older than you?
He must have been like 30, he must have been mid 30s.
And how old were you?
I was I was like 11, 12.
Okay.
And then got to be 13, 14 and that. And I was just like, dang, like he's kind of crazy or something. Like he'd be out there early in the morning and he'd just hear like whack, 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 you know? Crazy. And then it was in the summer times, he would just show up in the house. He'd like grab a cup of water in the morning as I was waking up, and he'd have his running shorts on and the no shirt, and he'd be like, "All right, I'm going for a run." He would run from my house in Cheshire to Lenox, which is what? I don't know, 20 miles?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I don't really know, but yeah, that's a ways.
It's
away.
a 25-minute drive from my house to Lenox, and like
you live in
hills.
Pittsfield. Yeah.
And I live in Pittsfield
So
now,
we're
but I
like-
grew up in Cheshire.
Yeah, but we're like, 10 minutes away from Lenox from here in
Yeah,
Richmond.
right.
So
So Cheshire to Lenox was a 25, almost 30-minute drive.
wow.
He would run there, and it was back roads. He took the back roads. He didn't like taking the freeway, like Route 8 and all that. And then he would turn around and come back. And he would show up, come running up the road. We'd be like, yo!
Yeah, right.
He'd come to the backyard. He had like a sleeve of saltines always and Heineken beers. And he would just sit there on the back porch and recharge with saltines and Heinekens.
So there you go. So a couple things to learn so far from this past 10 minutes is you can be nice in the kitchen and get your point across to people. And Heineken is not actually beer. It's a sports recovery drink.
The bad examples. Yeah,
hey,
man.
well, wow.
Listen, we're all adults here, okay?
Well, some of us.
Maybe I'm not. Anyway, I was like, this dude is a badass.
Yeah.
And he hung out with me. He was just real cool.
Yeah.
He was really great with me. He was a ton of fun, ton of energy. We did a lot of sports, like throwing footballs. He was insane at Frisbee. He taught me how to we'd have these huge catches that were so much distance. And he taught me how to throw a Frisbee so hard.
Really?
And you'd see him running. He'd dive into bushes and stuff for it. He didn't care.
I love
He just went for it.
You play Frisbee with your kids?
Not yet. They're still a little too little. Eli though, we've got a Frisbee that isn't a hardcore, hard plastic Frisbee, and he can whip that thing, and he can catch it now too.
I'd like to play Frisbee with you sometime.
Yeah?
I used to do that with my dad a lot.
Did you?
For whatever reason, he was really big into it, and we would have these epic showdowns on our little side road where we'd go till 10, and yeah, it was great. It was a lot of
That's
fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
Your dad, he was. You mentioned him here and there as inspiration. Somebody who freaking just put his head down and worked.
Yeah, I think he was probably the first example for me of what hard work was.
Huh.
He would work. He worked for a plumbing supply warehouse, and lifting around cast iron pipe, big bundles of copper pipe, a lot of just dirty, heavy stuff, boilers.
Wow.
Just really heavy duty shit. But no matter what, he was sick or whatever, he would always go into work. And something he used to always drill into my head when I was a kid, which I never really understood it, because him and my mother are almost polar opposites. She is a person that is very caring and gives to the point where it hurts. Gives to the point with people that it's impossible to ever repay anybody. But for him, he would always tell me, it's you got to take care of number one. You have to love yourself, take care of yourself, and do what you need to do. But yeah, that's. I
think he meant that, right? Did he mean that? Did he do that for himself?
No, he didn't. But of course, I didn't know him. Well, my parents split up when I was a teenager for about 2 years, and I saw a completely different side of my father than I'd ever seen. He was a very, his apartment was immaculate. It was beautiful. He did a lot of stuff, a lot of sports, things like that. Sure. I mean, if you
A little
want,
bit
thank
more.
you. It is your gift, and thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it was just he would go and do sports, softball, and his goal was to live to 100. You know, my mother is a different type of person. You know, she has a lot of problems with her family and stuff like that. So my father ended up being, he is very much the caregiver in these types of situations. He gives also till it hurts. But yeah, so that's where I learned that stuff. And for me, you know, I almost felt guilty. It's like when you're a kid, you're just like, you know, with your kids, they learn stuff. You learn stuff when you're a child.
Yeah.
Your brain is much more elastic or whatever. So you pick up on things.
Mm.
And anytime I was sick, I remember a few times my mom, being the overbearing caregiver that she is, would actually call me into work at places. She would say, oh, you know, Jimmy's not going to be able to come in today. And I would just show up there. Like, oh, your mom called and said you weren't going to be here. And I was like, yeah, don't listen to that.
What was that, like supermarkets and stuff?
Yeah, it was like Guido's, the supermarket that I would work at.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, there was, and into this day too, I mean, it's the same thing, a high pain threshold. I had this like really crazy, as you probably have seen, scar on my hand. I did that when I was at Taft Farms. When I was on lunch break, I was trying to channel out this big piece of birch to make like a log, kind of like a channel in a big piece, in a big log to fill it with something. And I hit like a knot or something. It kicked back and it actually ran over my hand. And that was crazy. And after I bandaged up and just went back to work. I worked in the field for the rest of like 6 hours or so. I don't know if that's the right thing. I mean, because usually when your body hurts or stuff like that, you go into shock.
So like, yeah, why did you do it?
I just because it was my job, it was my responsibility to do it. And if I called out or whatever, I mean, because I think a big thing is too, with any job, and I really specifically can resonate with restaurants. Somebody calls in sick. Everybody's already, in restaurants, everyone's plate overfull as it is on their own stations.
Yeah.
Someone calls in, now you got to take on all that extra work. I never wanted to be that person to have to put so like in order for me to call in sick, I would have had to been on my deathbed. I remember this one time I was actually the chef of the Route 7 Grill, and this annual fundraiser for a thing called Project Sprout. There's this really great program started at a local high school.
Yeah.
That really celebrated, greenhouses, educating kids how to plant, how to farm. So this big annual pig roast at the Route 7 Grill, this job that I took. It was my first job out of culinary school. And I had bought Danskos, and they were too small, and they started to, like, after a long day, like 12, 13 hours in your feet or whatever, they were digging into the tops of my feet. So I brought them down to where I bought them, and they said, well, they're supposed to be snug, but we can stretch them out. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm relying on professionals at that point.
Yeah.
They stretched them out, and I decided to just tough it out, right? End of service. I had these really deep purple bands, indentations in the tops of my toes, or on top of my foot. And also, I started to develop some weird, I don't know if it was, it had to have been related, but some sort of like weird ingrown toe situation happening on both big toes. So I developed a limp, and I just remember at one point, to the point where there was, I started to develop this rash on my leg. It was these red dots, and I actually couldn't even really apply pressure on my right leg. So after we got through this fundraiser, I actually had to go to the hospital, into the emergency room, and they told me that I had a blood infection in my leg.
God.
So the entire time I was texting the owner of the business because it was Memorial Day weekend, and I was like, I can't not be there. I need to know what's happening. I need to know, I need to be there for the team in some capacity. So Lester was texting me pictures of the team on the line, letting me know everything was okay, and they were rising to the occasion.
Wow.
This one young kid, though, oh my God, he was such a dude that totally didn't belong in the kitchen.
Oh, no.
Like, he had towels wrapped around his head, around his neck, and like, come on, man, it's not, you know what I mean? Yeah,
He's like trying to stay cool or something?
I guess, yeah. Like, I don't really know what the situation was, but so,
blind dork.
yeah. But that was the deal. Like, you had to haul me out of someplace.
Yeah, man.
There's a lot of people that have been inspired me in that way. I mean, so what about?
Sorry. Before you switch it up, why? Like, why do you think you're the type of person who's driven in that way? Like the type of person who's just like, even when you're clawing on your hands and feet, at a hospital or whatever, away from the scene, you still are trying to, be engaged to keep things pushing forward. Because like that's the mentality that you have. That's what has grown your business. Like that keeps you. That's just what makes you as successful as you are today.
I think it has a lot to do with my deep caring for my team, if that makes sense. And sometimes I think it's too much, but I always want to be there. I want to be the guy that people look to. Mm-hmm. I don't, not that I need the praise in that way, but I've been in positions in my life where I've been in the weeds or I've been in some difficult space. I haven't been able to fight my way out of a paper bag. But I've had very special people in my life that have been there at very specific times that I needed them to be. And I know how much that's helped me. So if I can be that way for people, could be that sort of shining light in a moment of darkness, I want to be able to repay all of those gifts that were given to me by amazing people.
That's awesome. Then do you think your dad was like that or is like that?
To me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, as with any family, you have challenges.
Yeah.
But he's definitely a person that I learned a lot from. It's, but for me, I think in my life, there's been a couple people that it's good, right? Gave you the shivers.
You saw that, huh?
Of course, yeah.
Got
it's hard
me.
to miss it, I think.
I was happy.
I
immediately I thought like, oh, I'm happy I'm not on camera for that shot.
No, don't worry. We see everything.
Damn, that's going to be one of those little teaser trailer fucking things, isn't it?
I hope so, yeah. There's certain people in my life that, like one of the very first, because I came out of culinary school blazing. I worked at one really high end inn that, when you go really hard in culinary school, for at least, again, I only know my perspective.
Yeah.
So I went really hard in culinary school. I came out top of my class, and I was 20, something like that, 21.
Nice. Which is young, by the way. I mean, a lot of kids, a lot of people that age are going through cooking school, and they'll make it 6 or 7 months after getting out of school before they decide to do something else or go to school to get an undergraduate in something else.
For sure. And I mean, what added to that, fuel to the sort of ego, I guess, was that a lot of people in my culinary school were second career changers. So folks that have already done something, lawyers, insurance agents or whatever, right? Pursuing a second passion of theirs. So I graduated top of my class. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll fucking rule this world. I went to this very first inn, got spanked up and down, basically broke me. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah, you got knocked out.
Yeah, I totally did, totally. And like, as I mentioned to you before, like even thought about changing careers.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Guido's, this place I've talked about so many times, came back and offered me a position, basically a creative position for me to do cooking demonstrations and classes and all this kind of great stuff that really helped me in many stages of my life.
Yes, because, sorry to
go ahead.
dismantle you for just a second, but it's going to be good. It's good for you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You are not just a cook from culinary school. You have more. You have more to become a chef, and it was obvious. It was obvious to the people at Guido's, I'm sure. And it was obvious to me when I saw you doing a demo, like just walking through. You're like smart, you engage with people, you have personality, you talk, you're charming, and you know how to cook, and you can cook and talk at the same time, which is like a skill that not everybody has. You're not just a line dog, and you never were. And that place, I think, saw that and helped you to develop that more.
Yeah, I mean, even taking a step back from before going into culinary school, as you talked about your cousin, as being inspiration. There was one person. I mean, I thought about this a lot this week. Who is the one person that, not professionally but personally, that I was most inspired by or looked up to? And to me, it had to be the person who drove me to be able to be sitting in this seat right now having this discussion.
Wow.
Was at Guido's. I was working in the produce department. At that point, I had no clue about wanting to pursue a career. I was 19, something like that. I was happy living at home with my parents. When I was interested in a woman, I would bake for them. Usually make them like a chocolate tart or something like that, or
Chocolate
cookies.
tart, that was your game?
Yeah, something.
Nice.
Anything, really. It was mostly chocolate I would gravitate towards and give it as a gift to flirt or whatever. And I guess I wouldn't say a fatal mistake, but it was, you date a few people and it was fine, everything. And then all of a sudden I met like my match or something where a woman that was 34, and I think I must have been 19. And so we had this like really great summer romance. And her whole thing was, you have so much talent, and which is weird to like for me to accept that kind of, phrase. You have so much talent. What are you doing with your life? And I was like, I don't know. I'm 19 years old. I'm happy. I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm going to the mall on Friday, Saturday night, whatever. I'm hanging out with you, whatever. Life, how does life get any better than this? And she was like, no, you need to move out of your parents' house. You need to figure out a career. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I guess I like to cook, like to bake. So go, okay, well, then we're going to get you signed up at a culinary school. And I was like, okay. Let me just grab on with two hands here. And it was basically like a white knuckle ride for what I thought about. It was like 3 months.
Wow.
This woman completely changed my life in 3 months. Then we broke up, and then we fell out of touch for several years. But, it was just crazy. It brought me down to culinary school in New York City. We toured it. Afterwards, we went out and had cocktails at a couple different bars to celebrate, and then took the train back. And, yeah, it was a wild ride. But that person always was there. And, with her, she suffered massive loss in her life. Her mother passed away from cancer. Her mother was a very talented chef in the South, in Texas.
Oh, wow.
Her mother's name was Mary Nell Reck. And so, she was close with her mother. And shortly after her mother passed away, her brother passed away through his own doing. So because of that, she had a very hard time getting close to people. And I don't ultimately know what... Maybe it was that, through those types of things, she wanted to help other people because she had felt so bad. I don't really know. I can't claim to know what drove her. But, she had her own dance company. She was like a modern, dancer, and she became a professor of dance. And
wow.
there's gone on to do many, many wonderful things. But, I will forever be grateful to her because that was the trajectory. When I was going to culinary school for a while, she gave me a place to stay at her apartment in Mount Vernon, New York. She wasn't staying there, but it's funny because it was a dorm. She was going to Sarah Lawrence, and it was a dorm full of ladies that was there. So, I would just cook things, like roast vegetables. And I remember we'd sit down, we'd watch, the Emmys or something like that. It was a whole group of people. And, of course, she wasn't there. How weird was that? I was hanging out with a bunch of, her fellow students. When did they think a dude was just going to be all up in their, their house? So, anyhow, yeah, it was great. It was a very fun and very interesting time in my life. Professionally speaking, one of...
And so how were you feeling lit up? You were feeling lit up by the cooking and the other aspect, all the other stuff going on too? Were you just yeah, man, this is it. I'm going to cook. This is awesome. What were you thinking? You said you graduated at top of your class, so you must have been pretty fired up.
I was, yeah. I at that point, I remember saying to myself, I feel incredibly lucky knowing what I want to do at this age. And based off of, thinking that wow, seeing all these other people that have changed their careers, me being this young, I have a bright future ahead of me.
Yeah.
Knowing what I want to do, how incredible is this?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was on fire. A little country kid going to the city, riding in the subways.
Yeah, you were already exhibiting incredible maturity, man. Even at that age.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those types of things when you meet these specific people. And what I remember, one of our last sort of, I think the candle was starting to fizzle out at that point in time with our romance, and I think she had already made up that, made up her mind in that time that she needed to start focusing on her studies, her master's, so therefore she needed to eliminate any sort of distractions in her life. And I remember we were sitting on this couch, and I was just head over heels. I was in love with that person at that point because that was the first person who actually taught me, as crazy as this is, never put a chef's knife into a dishwasher. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, don't ever. She almost like scolded me about it. I was like, okay, I'm sorry. It's
Nice.
so funny. But, we were sitting on her couch and she said to me, I was just like, yeah, isn't this crazy? And, I'm so happy that I met you and all this. I'm just, whatever, saying something romantic. I don't remember what I was saying. But I remember her response, and I'll remember it for the rest of my life. She's like, yeah, darling, sometimes some people just come into our lives for a specific reason, and then they just disappear. And I was like, wham, shot to my chest. And I was like, oof, okay, I guess the end is near. But as I've gotten older and didn't have that, viewing the world in those like rose sunglasses or whatever, it's so true. Certain people come into your life. They can mean so much for that moment. And then they move on. And it's not necessarily even anything bad. But those people forever changed you. And the other interesting thing about that is that you might be one of those types of people that have came into someone's life, could have been some offhanded comment, could have been some compliment, could have been a really bad moment in their life, and you just happen to say the right thing at the right time, and that forever influenced them, and you don't even know about it. You have no clue that you could have changed someone's life. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that is powerful. It's cool to ponder for a little while.
Yeah.
Dang, man. So that sounds like some early inspiration right there. And so you said you got knocked out. You got KO'd for a little while shortly after culinary school because you got whipped at the old inn there.
No, the Wheatley.
Yeah, the Wheatley.
The old inn was a place.
I didn't mean the old inn. I meant anyway.
Yeah.
The Wheatley, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were operating on a whole different level. I mean, just ridiculous, like really ridiculous, like amazing, great place. But it was way over my head, and I just, they were also kind of short-staffed because one of their guys ended up getting called back because of their visa. And it was too much for me at that point in time, and it crumbled me, And and then that's when Guido's offered me that job to come back and basically create that position.
Yeah.
And then the Route 7 Grill ended up coming up, and
it was like a path with kind of an interesting mix of a path being created for you, but also a path that felt right for you to take.
I think also a lot has to, I'm a real big believer in the law of attraction, and it doesn't even have to be like a hokey sort of religious or whatever kind of crunchy way to look at it. The truth is, if you just think about life and you are a positive person, you're a great person to interact with. Anytime anybody comes to you or interacts with you, you're super grateful. Even if it's some offhanded comment about maybe an opportunity or whatever, you're super grateful. You're just nice to interact with. If you have the opportunity to work with somebody, you give it the all to the very last second. You don't ever give up. I mean, word like that travels, man, and people want to work with you. So the more positivity, the more positive lines you cast out there, more positive things are going to come at you.
Yeah.
I think at that stage in my life, I started to get a little bit more invigorated. I was happy again, and those opportunities came in. And it was a weird thing to take on the helm at the Route 7 Grill because, at that point, I never really had a real professional chef that I spent a lot of time working under.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was sort of learning as I went, and there was an existing sous chef there that I thought for sure I was going to come into a situation where they were going to be disgruntled. Why were they overlooked or whatever? So I studied all these leadership books, which helped me out a lot to this day. As a lot of stuff that's buried in my brain, but ultimately they ended up being totally agreeable and like amazing to work with, and.
Yeah, that's cool. That was you developed the skills as you needed to develop them.
Yeah, all in due time.
Yeah.
And, then, during that time, I was in another long-term relationship with someone for, 4.5 years. And we had a really bad breakup. I went to work in another restaurant. And at that point, I worked underneath a chef who really had his stuff together. Dan Hardy. Shout out to Dan Hardy up at the Canyon Ranch right now. I love you, Dan. You're a good dude. Really hard worker. And what I really appreciated about him was that he was in the trenches all the time. He was such a hard worker, very, very smart chef. But the biggest thing for me was on Tuesday nights. Every Tuesday night was deep clean night. And it was pizza night, so they did the pizzas, whatever, put it out there. I mean, it was a nice, really farm-to-table restaurant. Tuesday nights was just a simple pizza night, a couple different options. And the dude who was making pizzas would cook up a bunch of extra pies that night. We would just eat pizza and just blast music and just basically tear up the roofs of our mouth with semolina. I remember that always being the next day. I'd feel it, totally ground up. Drink beer and just scrub the hell out of that kitchen.
That's awesome.
But like
That's
I remember
awesome.
like 1 o'clock in the morning being dog tired because when I came on, it was just him and I. I mean, I was a salaried employee; he was salaried. We started off breaking down pigs. That's where I really learned how to break down pigs was through him.
Huh.
And it started off as a sort of experiment or like a sort of a group gathering with a bunch of the cooks. And each time they weren't paying the other cooks to come there. It was an opportunity for education. So the first time everyone showed up. Second time everyone showed up like 20 minutes late. Last time nobody showed up. So it was left over Dan and I to break down the entire pig. Then come upstairs and be like, holy shit, it's 1 o'clock. We have to prep up for regular service.
Wow.
Everyone else comes sort of coasting in, and we're like, we've been going full tilt since 7 in the morning, going up there. And anyway, so Tuesday nights, I remember being so beat. And then all of a sudden looking over and then seeing Dan behind the burners, the stoves, with, ass crack hanging out or whatever, scrubbing the wall. And I was like, dude, if this mother effer is going to be here right now, there's no reason for me to be tired. That would give me that gust of energy. And that's something I've always wanted to be for the people that work with me.
That's amazing, man. Wow.
And that stayed with me, and that'll stay with me forever.
Wow.
Huge inspiration. And I've mentioned that to him before. We've gone out for coffee. And him, he admitted, he's like, yeah, that was just a bonding effort. But the psychology of stuff, I mean, that did something for me. Did it do something for the other 2 cooks that were there? I don't know. Were they able to see the forest for the trees? I don't really know. But for me, that impacted me deeply.
That's awesome. Because the seeds of inspiration were already in you. They're just waiting to be watered. And you, in a way, maybe even subconsciously or sort of, you selected that person. Like you felt out the situation of what was going on at that restaurant. You met that dude, and you were probably somewhere inside of you were like, there's something I'm going to get from this guy. Like there's something that I need. I know that I need it, and this is going to fulfill that, and he's going to fulfill that. And
that's so interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, exactly. When I met that guy, I was like, I'm in for an education. That's really great, man. And then, there's so many. I mean, for me, really, anybody that works really hard. I mean, of course, there's other really known chefs, Dan Barber, Magnus Nielsen, Rene Redzepi. Like all these people are hugely inspirational. Anybody that just busts their ass to make something happen is hugely inspirational, and for me, just seeing you are an inspiration to me because you push yourself constantly past your limits more than anybody I've ever seen. And to the point where it's like, sometimes I worry about you because it's like you go so hard.
I fall on my face sometimes.
Yeah.
I fall on my face a good amount of the time.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, it's either you have so much heart or you don't have a brain in your head. One of the two.
Probably the latter.
Yeah, probably the latter. No, but like you have so much resilience inside of you, and that's an interesting thing for me. Is like, what is making that tick? Is it a level of like, what is it? Because I mean, what is it? What do you think it is?
Well, in a lot of ways, it's you.
Wow.
Because you have that too. And I saw you do that. And I saw how you built this business. And I see, like how you're humble about it. And you don't really, like, I don't know if you actually recognize like what you have done and the amount of work that you put in and like how inspiring you have actually been to me. So like, sorry, but like, yeah, man, like seeing what you have done has made me realize that maybe there's some little bit of that I have in me that I could tap into, like some little bit, and nowhere near as much as you have. And I use that, like you've watered the seeds of inspiration. And so there are certain things that I've been able to do and take on in my life because I watched you like basically do it, and because you have been there like really been there for me through all of these micro moments over the last like 3.5 years. So like, thank you. It's mostly because of you, and because you came in at a time when I needed somebody like you.
Well, thank you, and it's been my absolute pleasure to be there for you. I look at you as one of my closest friends, so thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for doing this together with me, because I think these, man, even just through COVID and all the other stuff, the moments we've been able to share through voice memos, as I've mentioned to you, have been really impactful, life-changing for me. And it's a nice thing because it's not, we're both busy. We can't always be in the phone and talking, but it's just nice to be able to problem solve and work with each other. And I mean, this has become something that I really look forward to, the podcast every week.
Yeah.
Because, when we're digging into topics and thinking about stuff, for me, I've always been a type of person that forges ahead. Like, for a moment, I know we'll have to edit it out for sensical things, for time-wise, but earlier in the podcast, we had a bit of a problem with me just being able to, like, tap in a little bit, because I've spent so much of my life just forging ahead. I don't... It's hard for me to look back on certain things in my life because, like, I don't know. I'm a very restless type of person. Middle of the night, I'll wake up with ideas, and I've cracked into this notebook. As a matter of fact, it's been used for many different things in my life, and I'm looking at all these ideas and stuff, and they're not. I have so many of these ideas that aren't even collected in places that make sense, like stored in a Google Drive or something like that. They're just everywhere.
Yeah.
And because I'm running my life like that, it's so hard to be organized. And even I may have a great idea that I write down here one night after a few cocktails or whatever. So it's, thank you for saying those types of things, because for me, it's hard. Because I was an only child too, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you. My mother used to dote upon me all the time, telling me like how handsome I was or whatever, because she loved me.
Yeah.
She always told me that she wanted me to have everything she never had as a kid. And that just, I don't know, for me, it had an opposite reaction. So I don't take praise really well inherently, as you mentioned earlier, like, oh, someone will say something and I kind of roll my eyes or whatever. But there is a level of me that does require some of that. But at the same token, I don't really take the time to savor that. It's almost like it's a sip on a marathon, like a little sip of a Gatorade thing.
Yeah.
I just have to keep moving forward. I have to innovate. And that's been a big thing without inspiration for me lately, with these things. And that's with these little pockets that have been coming up that have fed this well that has run dry months ago. And I mean, it's something I committed, or that I had an acknowledgement to myself months ago, years ago, I think, really, is that I need daily inspiration. Without inspiration, I will die. I become a very hollow person.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as I mentioned, man, these Tuesdays mean everything. Because it just feeds me.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. It's
I'm
an
so
honor to
thankful
be
that
able to do this with you.
Yeah, let me talk, please. I'm trying to pay you a compliment. Just give me that.
I'm not good
Just
at that.
give me
though.
that. Well,
I'm not good at it either.
You love it. But
No,
I'm
like,
so
this isn't-
happy. Please give me the moment. I'm so happy that you're choosing to spend your birthday with me. I've been trying to, like, when I had that bottle, that's the reason why I was acting strange before.
Oh.
Because I'm also really strange about giving gifts too. Like putting myself in that spot, because I know what comes after giving a gift is, oh my God, the praise and all that kind of stuff, and I don't want that. It's about you. It's about
Right.
it's about you. Yeah. Fuck the editor, right? Who's got to sit through all this shit.
Thank you for editing that out.
Of course. Yeah, so anyhow, was there a moment in your life, we're talking about pushing through walls, can you think back to a time when you pushed to the point where you thought for sure that you were going to fail, but somehow you persevered? And then afterwards, what did that feel like?
It's awesome. I like that. There could definitely be a moment like that. But you know what's been sticking out in my head? Because I've been thinking about this question a little bit. I had a feeling it would come up. It actually happens to me still quite frequently. Almost every night that I'm putting out dinner at the place that I work at, I get this feeling like I'm not going to make it on time. I know it's not going to be on time. And it happens for lunch, too. I'm like, we've given ourselves too much to do. We took on too much. We're going to be a minute late. We're going to be 2 minutes late. Not cool. It's all a big failure. Not going to work out. But, and I still have it, even though I'm continuing to learn the lesson every day that I can persevere. It's so weird, dude. Like, I have this ability to persevere and learn that I can overcome. But then the very next time I'm in a similar situation, I have to go through it all over again.
Right. But in that moment, do you ever think to yourself, I've done this already.
Yeah.
And I made it last time and the time before it and the time before it.
Yeah.
Dude, what is your problem?
Like,
dude?
it's finally starting to happen that happens. It's like 25 years into my career.
Even like up at Westfield, was that situation too up there? Would that happen there?
Yeah, like there were some nights where I was like, damn, I'm pretty awesome. I can't believe I did that. I didn't think I was going to be able to do that. But it's sort of like, I think that I learned, as you probably did early on, when you're on the line and you've got to put out a meal or you've got to put plates out and you're starting to fall into the weeds, the worst thing that you can do is start caving, using your mind, thinking that you're not going to make it and that you're not going to do it. Like, you have to just keep pushing no matter what. You have to start communicating at that point.
Yes, the communication.
And
I've
you have to,
seen
like,
so many
pull
cooks.
yourself out. You can't crash. Like,
No.
you cannot crash.
I've seen so many cooks on the other side of the line where I'm talking to them and I see them heading down a downward spiral. What do you need? What do you need? Tell me what you need. And
Yeah.
they just cannot communicate.
Yeah.
Just cannot communicate. And I don't know, maybe it's just an incredible sense of
I
overwhelm.
know the feeling. Like, you're so overwhelmed, you can't even talk anymore. And you feel, like, hopeless. And you're like, I can't do this, and you start caving. I've seen people do that. And then there's, like, a moment where it's like, you just can't do that. Like, you can't switch that on because everything falls apart at that point.
Yeah.
It's like you just have to, like, I found myself shouting at moments where I, like, know that I need something and I'm about to crash, and, like, speaking really fast because I feel like if I have to be able to squeeze it out, but I barely can, So it'll be like, I need garnish. I need somebody to heat my plates. I need somebody to wipe the plates. I need, it's like, just get over yourself and just, like, get out of the weeds. Like, by whatever means possible.
Yes.
Don't cave.
No, it's almost, and that's the part to relinquish some of that. You can't carry all that by yourself.
Yeah, like, you might have gotten yourself there, and okay, there's going to be a time to figure that out afterwards. You might have gotten yourself in the weeds because you messed up. You misfired a couple of plates, or you didn't prep enough of something, and now you're in trouble because you got to pull off of the line and, like, rebraise some purple cabbage or whatever it is that you got to do, and it gets you in trouble. You didn't set yourself up right in the way that you were trained and the way that you do every day. Like, you missed one fucking thing.
Yeah.
Like, it could be on you that it happened.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're there, and you gotta get out.
Yeah. I remember there was this time when I worked at a butcher shop. It was two of us, the owner and I, came out because we used to do these, like, Sunday night asados, these, like, outdoor cooking things where we had one of the pieces of gear set up out back. And it wasn't like it was crazy busy. You just had to. But, the person that was working on that station had done lunch service, so it was a longer day for them. They had to roll into prep for all that stuff, and it was very challenging. But I remember that person starting to go head down, and both of us, the owner and I, were both like, what do you need? The two people sitting there, two talented cooks sitting there, what do you need? And they just literally couldn't communicate. And I just remember being so disappointed in that person at that moment, because I'm like, dude, all you had to do is say something.
Yeah.
And, is it the right thing to be disappointed? No, but when we're both just to tell them, like, we're both, like, literally saying, hey, just tell us what you need. And I remember another time, too, I came back after an event, pretty bushed. and the asado was still happening, and I went over to check in, and the person's like, yeah, they oversold. It was like a pork tenderloin or something like that. They oversold it, and I don't have any left. I'm like, well, no problem. So I went inside, and the person like watched. Like I literally took the pig off the rail. Actually, no, I cut the pig on the rail and took the pork tenderloin out and walked outside and gave it to him. In the end, we took an opportunity that could have been like, why are we waiting, to like this amazing experience where it's literally being harvested right there just for them. So they were like, they couldn't have been more happy with that experience. They're like, oh my God, now, did you see him? He just cut that out of the pig and now it's on our plate. It's so wild. So
nice one.
I'm glad. Well, I mean, it happened to be, it just literally worked out perfect. You know,
Yeah.
it was there. I mean, hope they weren't waiting too long.
No. But that's the thing, man. Like, you had the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And that's right. Like that's something huge that I've learned about you, about how to stay inspired in a moment. Like when stuff is going on, you've often, and you're in your environment, like with your company, and we're in the weeds and whatever, and it's a couple minutes to service, or we're serving and we're like about to run out of something. You always have a way to like figure out how to get through it. And it does in a way that's not going to be super impactful on the guests, and that's going to be okay. And that might even end up being a positive outcome, you know? Like you have that kind of cool thing that I've learned a ton from.
Well, thank you. It's just, you know, in those times, I think I've always admired people. And Magdalena is actually one of them that, like, literally the tent could be on fire, and which something I want to get into here.
Yeah.
Like where something could be on fire and they're just all smiles. I think that's the idea, is that you never let people see behind the curtain, because all that does, I guarantee you, is just incite chaos across the board. So we could choose in that moment, if something gets screwed up, prep got screwed up or whatever, we can choose in that moment. And I've worked for companies where everything comes to a grinding halt because they wanted to know right in that moment who screwed up the prep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how's that going to help getting the food out right now?
Yeah, right.
So let's couch that, and then I'll have a conversation with that person behind closed doors. It gains nothing for me or that person for me to scream at that person in front of everyone else.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not perfect. You know, a couple different times I've yelled at people when they've made consistent mistakes, and I've just lost my temper. You know, as we can talk about this one event, Bush League.
Bush League.
In the beginning of the 2019 season, it was really hard for whatever reason.
It's like two events. It was like just two events.
It was a second event. It was doubleheader weekend, Friday and Saturday. It was a crazy weekend. People were exhausted. But for whatever reason, out of the gate, those are the problems of having a seasonal business. I just remember we're unloading all the truck, and we just had unloaded the truck the day before. And gear was getting dropped off all over the place. It was this incredible just mess. And I remember stopping and turning around and just snapping, because I was like, guys, what the F is going on? Why is this here? Why are all the frames here?
Yeah.
Why are the plates here? I said, let's stop everything we're doing right now and get everything organized. And they did. Everything got stacked up right away really fast. And then we instituted a plan to have two people pay attention to how things got unloaded after that event. Never happened again. But that day I was like pushed to my limit, I think. We were having growing pains that year. Like we were trying to push really hard to go into a certain direction. And I remember Simeon and I were actually carrying over this cauldron of oil, like right to the brim of oil. We were frying something. And I don't
You're bringing it to a fire.
And it's like a raging fire. We had 40 ducks cooking around a fire.
And the range was big that day. It was like deep.
Yeah, it was really deep, yeah. And we had things like a fruit de mer happening, so like beautiful seafood cooking in another large cauldron, potatoes probably cooking at that point, simmering. So it was a big situation happening, big fire happening.
Somebody got burned, actually, on those potatoes that day. I was helping them in.
Luis?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, and his arm and his tattoo.
Yeah.
Lady face.
Yeah, that was over potatoes.
Yeah. So there was something that happened. I remember that the grass was slippery for some reason. I don't know what it was. And we were coming over, you and I were carrying it, and it's very challenging when we're carrying. I designed these hooks that go through the loops, and you have to have similar sized people when you're carrying them. Otherwise, one is tipping, water spilling. In this case, oil is spilling. So you really don't want that to happen. really like hot oil. So we're walking over to the fire, and you slipped or something happened. I don't know. It could have been me. I don't really know. All I remember is the oil going into the fire and this large combustion happened. And I don't even recall this because, again, this is this idea of what I mentioned earlier, that I don't focus on that kind of stuff. Like, that doesn't really need to be registered in my small database that I have. I mean, there's constantly a lot of information that just gets dropped and purged so that I can only keep necessary information in here because it's a small hard drive. It's outdated.
Yeah, very.
So, thank you. And so you spilt the oil into the fire, right? Like, that's what we're saying. No, so like somehow the oil got into the fire by a slip, large combustion, and then you reminded me. I said, how did it go?
You slant. Well, first you were like, dude, why did this just happen? This is totally Bush League. And then you slammed your fist on one of the prep tables, like real hard. And then you were like, I gotta take 5. And you walked away, but only like you walked away like 4 steps, and then you came back. And you were like, all right, you go do this to put out the fire, you do this or whatever. And then you went over to like see what was going on with the rotisserie or whatever.
So funny, yeah. Yeah, and again, I don't even really quite remember that. And it's funny when you brought it up.
I need to take 5, and you took like 3 steps, and then you came back.
Well, it was ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, come on. Like, at that point, if I was that full of myself that I needed to go and take 5, what else could have happened in that moment?
Well, it probably would have been good. It was almost like you were, to me, it was almost like you were applying something you had read about or maybe learned from somebody of like, all right, if you're getting to overwhelm, before you do something crazy and like say something crazy, just walk away, take a minute, recenter yourself, and come back, and you'll be better than ever. And like it was almost like you were doing that. You were like, I need to take 5, and you like walked away, but then you were like, actually, I'm fine,
Yeah.
and you came back.
Right, because it's about in that moment. It's the moment. You know, you got to keep moving forward. You know, it's not about how hard you get hit or whatever. It's about how hard you can keep moving forward. I mean, yeah, there's times like for me, thinking about things when there's a couple different opportunities for thinking about when things were hitting the fan. We talking about Taft Farms, a farm I worked at. We did a wedding there, and it was like this crazy weekend. And the whole reason why I took this wedding was simply because Taft Farms was so close to our shop. I mean, it's like literally 15 minutes from the shop. It's right in Housatonic. And then the next day, we had a higher profile wedding all the way out 2.5 hours away. So I was like, all right, well, we can afford to take this other wedding because it's so close. It'll be nothing. We'll be out of there, 10 o'clock. We'll be all fresh, ready to roll. Turns out there were hurricane-like conditions for this event. We showed up with a bunch of easy-up tents. That was our means back then to prepare against rain. So we set everything up basically in an H-shape formation. All of our ovens were underneath one tent. It's a 10 by 20 tent. Then we had one in the center that had a larger rig that was turning, I want to say maybe like a leg of beef and a bunch of chickens. And then the other tent was prepped. So half of it was the large rig, and then there was tables. And then the other one, I think, was set up for, I don't even know what it was, maybe another piece of equipment. Anyways, the point is, it was raining
I can't remember what that one was in the front there.
Yeah.
I just remember the side and the prep tent.
Yeah. It had rained like I've never seen in my life. Of doing this for close to 10 years now is unreal. And so much so that they were originally planning on driving folks down into the field with these vans, but they couldn't actually bring them down because the vans were getting stuck in the mud. So cocktail hour was late, like 45 minutes, or maybe it was like maybe an hour, over an hour. And meanwhile, we're just getting pounded. And at this point on top of the tents, the rain is coming down so hard that it's actually starting to pocket. And no one's really noticing at that point. And the tents that are over the ovens at that point. No, so let me just kind of go back by saying that when we're cooking in the rain, when you're cooking over live fire, there's a huge amount of smoke that's being produced. Now, when we're cooking in a field, the open air disperses the smoke across. So, yes, it's hot. Yes, a cook that's cooking over the fire is going to absorb some smoke through their lungs and through their skin.
I was on Infernio that day for the first
it was like
time,
your first
too.
Time, yeah. And
talk about, yeah.
Yeah, and with the tents, those tents, the smoke
They
goes up.
hold it in.
And then it comes back down on folks. And I remember Simeon, I guess you just probably breathed in a few good gusts of smoke that were just not good for your
And now it's just
not
hot.
good for anybody. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
now it's
really,
just
and that's
hot.
the other thing too, is the heat reflecting. But I remember specifically one of the tents started to cave in, and I came over, and because like we had to keep emptying them out, and then all of a sudden,
By like poking them with like the back end of a shovel or
yeah,
something.
right, emptying them.
And I remember the sous chef, or like your second that day, was like, "Come on, guys, you got to remember, poke the tents, poke the tents." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Don't forget to poke the tents," because they would pool up so much. When you had to push them, it would be like a gust that would literally was putting out the infernios.
Yeah.
It would put out the fires.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, I was over on the big rig, like with the water just coming in, extinguishing all of the heart of the fire underneath. So I'm like battling that, and then I just remember all of a sudden everybody started yelling, "Oh my God, hey, 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 hey!" And I look over and I see the weight of that puddle had actually bent the steel legs and the frame and collapsed, and it must have been like it was right over like the bread oven. And I remember Mark. So I had this moment in this moment. I'm looking and I see Mike. I see Mark, and I think you might have been there.
I was
too.
definitely there. I
And
was the one who was yelling, "Hey, hey, hey, hey!"
Yeah. And then I looked over and I looked at everyone's faces, how much they were struggling. I'm like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? So I pulled out my knife.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I stabbed the top of the tarp, and it immediately leaked the water out. But at that point in time, I just was so angry. I ripped that tent down just by myself. I just tore the whole frame down. And I think we might have moved another one. And I just remember at that point looking at the one tent that was cooking the proteins, the star of the show, and I said, if this tent goes down, we're completely effed. So I went around every spot that I could see was pooling. I started sticking with my knife so it would leak. And I knew at that point that tent was going to be garbage after that event. But yeah, I mean, you got wrecked at that event. I mean, it was a hard event.
Yeah.
And that was the one for sure. I was like, dude, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is going to work.
Oh,
and,
wow.
you know, then we were able to get through it. The rain broke a little bit, and then we started plating up first course. And then I remember one of the cooks came running out, fire, fire. And I was like, oh my God, how did we light the tent on fire?
Oh my God.
So then I run around the corner and I see there was so much rain, there must have been a fine leak in the tent. The water was leaking down one of the poles where there was an overloaded circuit on there. And it was arcing blue electricity, which was essentially melting the box, melting the wires, and scorching the pole. So I told one of the guys, Mark, I'm like, go get a fire extinguisher. So I shot that up there, and oh, it was a mess. I got into an argument with the wedding planners about how they still wanted to serve in there.
Yeah,
and,
I remember that.
If you're in an area like where you empty a fire extinguisher, nobody can be in there. It irritates your eyes, your lungs, your skin.
Yeah.
So we did the best
And
we
the
could.
tables were all set.
Yeah,
They
we
were
were-
all
Yeah,
decorated.
we were like 10 minutes. Waters were filled. We were like 10 minutes out from service. So we had to rinse all that stuff in bus tubs. My team was doing that. Meanwhile, I was like trying to fend off the wedding planners. We had to push it. It probably was like another maybe 30 minutes or so to get that entire. And I think in remarkable time, I was really impressed with the team to be able to set everything up in the cocktail tent. It was a big party. That was insane.
That was a big party.
And then the other event we did in Rhode Island at the end of the year last year with the quality of the wood.
Oh,
What
yeah.
you lost your sweater at. That was another one
Oh,
too. I
yeah.
thought for sure it was like the worst wood we've ever worked with. It was an incredibly high profile client.
That
and-
was crazy.
Yeah,
You
the
were
wood-
like you were chopped. Like luckily, there was some brush that had just been taken down, like some
Yes.
trees and some weeds or some like
Yeah.
bushes or something.
Yeah.
And it was dry.
Yeah, it was
Not
intense.
seasoned, but dry.
No, that was crazy. I mean, and that's like shows you like how beholden we are to the firewood, and then also the weird regulations about firewood. How you're not allowed to be you're not allowed to sell wood or transport wood across county borders because
Yeah.
of the Asian ash borer beetle. So some events we get wood that's great when we have wood people in the area, but when we go into unknown territory, sometimes it can be like they literally cut the trees down on the way to the event.
Yeah.
And it's like you're cooking, and it's like the wood is hissing,
It's hissing and foaming and stuff.
foaming. Yeah, it's
That's the
unreal. But the
worst.
benefit to that is once you can get that going, it carries so much steam. The fire is so much hotter than seasoned firewood. But the trick is you got to get it going. You got to
Yeah.
get a raging fire, and then just keep feeding it, and it basically just incinerates all the water. So yeah, I mean, so so
I
that's
remember that.
so. And then what about for you? What about sometimes like when you pushed really hard and you failed?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I'm
a good
sorry,
one.
but you failed. What about it?
It was working with you, man.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Do I know about this?
I'm really sorry. Yeah, I think you know about it.
Oh, boy.
There was one particular event. It was a big event, and we. It was a really hard one. It was like really challenging,
Into the
and
deep?
yeah.
Oh, you're going to steal my thunder. That was going to be my baby. I was going to give birth to in this podcast.
Well, so you go first. Then.
No. It's you. Go. You go, and then I'll talk about, that this is your perspective. I can give our guests the entire perspective. So talk to me about yours.
So I was pushing hard all day. You had empowered me to just sort of watch over and make sure Flo was good in the kitchen. You were going to be running around, and your second was going to be running around. So it was just kind of like make sure things were on track. And that was cool. Like that was okay. We were pushing through, but it came down to this moment in service where there was one particular task that I needed to do.
Dumplings?
Yep.
Yep.
And it was like, you were like, all right, dude, you have like 30 minutes to get them all done. Go. And I was like, okay. And I went to go do it. And I got like, I didn't do it. I failed. I couldn't get them cooking right. I couldn't get the fire right. The smoke was like, it got me. And I couldn't get the water hot enough. I couldn't even see what was going on because there was so much smoke. So I was trying to work blind. And then we actually changed location. We put the fire in another spot. And so I was trying to get that fire going so that I could get water up so that it would create steam so that it could make the dumplings. Mm-hmm. And I was just trying to do it. And time was running short. And I couldn't get them cooked like the way that they needed to be cooked. And they weren't formed in the way that they needed to be formed either. It was just like, yeah, it was really intense, man. And there were people who were coming over and checking out what I was doing, like guests. And I was trying to be cool. I was like, yeah, it's all good. Like trying not to let them see it. And I don't know if they did, but, I did the best that I could, but I felt like it just still wasn't enough. And I had pushed beyond my limits so much that I could barely actually move my arms at the end of making those dumplings. Jeez. And was like, I just need to get these back up to the main table to get plated. Like, I just have to be able to walk. Like, I could barely even, like, walk or move my arms. Like, that's how hard I was pushing. And I still could not do it well.
I remember Dom, I came out to check on you at one point, and literally when I came out, Dom was with you, and he tripped and fell on the ground straight in his chest, and I was like, what is going on out here, Simeon? All you had to do is cook dumplings, and I got Dom, got a concussion, I got to roll him into the creek now. I'm not paying the workman's comp. No, I'm kidding. No, but it was that event, man. That was a lot. That was very ambitious. Very ambitious, and the hardest thing for me was that, going way back earlier in our podcast now, is that the very first event we couldn't give tickets away. We had done up to that point 3 events. We did Taft. We did one at Mill River Farm. It was inside this greenhouse. You weren't there for that. It was our second event that we did, like an open ticketed event, which was great. I mean, it was going to rain like crazy. We had this beautiful, we were going to be right by Jan's house, by the mountain, but overlooking the Taconics.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was going to be beautiful, and at the last minute, the forecast changed. We had to hustle everything and move it inside of the greenhouse. But ultimately, in the end, it worked out amazingly because it was such just a beautiful feeling of community inside of the greenhouse. It was really great. The third one was Into the Wild.
Into the Wild.
And I remember with that one when I walked the woods, because I spent an extensive amount of time blazing a trail through the woods with my sous chef. And I was super excited about this stuff. And when I walked everyone through, I thought it was kind of odd that everyone was a little bit quiet, but I didn't really pay much mind to that. We did that event. We gambled hard with the weather. It was almost supposed to rain, but thankfully it was like 3 miles away. You could see the rainbow and the thundering lightning behind us. It was amazing.
It was awesome. Ultimately, we pulled that one off.
Yeah, that was an amazing event. I loved that one. Into the Deep. So the story was when it came to Into the Deep, I spent a lot of time honing my craft with video editing and put together some really cool like teaser videos. And I was really proud about that. And we sold all of the tickets within, I think the Hearst one was within like 48 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit.
I remember your Instagram stories.
Yeah.
You
and
were
I was
like,
all right,
dude.
Let's go. Because those types of events, they're never the goal. We're not doing it to make money, but they're incredibly expensive to pull off. So that's a couple reasons why the ticket is so expensive to get in, because we just have to cover our costs. So we decided to say, well, let's open it up a little bit more and try to be able to offset some more costs so that we're actually, maybe making a little money. And those tickets sold out within, I think, 14 hours. It was an additional 20 tickets. It's insane. I'm like, wow, okay, great. So I poured so much time and effort into that event, thinking about it. And I remember it being, we went for the walk, and everybody was stone silent. And I said a few times, wow, why is everybody so quiet? Wow, why is everybody so quiet? In hindsight, I realized they were completely overwhelmed. Because there was so much. The more excited I was, and the more I went on about how much detail and how awesome this one stop was going to be, with every stop, times that by for the cocktail hour, 6 stops, that's a lot of information to throw at people, and it can make people feel really uncomfortable. So I think they were really overwhelmed. And the way I would handle that in the future, coming from a managerial standpoint, would be only explaining those stations to the people that it pertained to separately. And I did that walk, I think that day 4 times, with planners, with staff, with cooks. It was exhausting just to keep rehashing that whole thing.
Wow. But you were really inspired by that event and all these events.
Yeah, that is the idea. And like recently, I just had a phone call with a florist who approached us, a really talented florist that approached us about wanting to do a collab dinner.
It's awesome.
And I hadn't, with the whole COVID stuff, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love doing weddings. I love fulfilling people's dreams and being there for them on the biggest day of their life.
Yeah,
I
man.
get to be able to spend that with them and see them smile and give them entertainment means so much to me.
Yeah,
But
and I know you mean that. I absolutely know you mean that.
It's basically, I think, the reason why I feel in a lot of ways it feels like that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
But
these events, how are they different?
They're different because we get to control the whole experience.
So they inspire you in a different kind of way because you can be like totally creative.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to with me. It's that at the end of the day, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
I love food, but I'm an artist, and food is the tool that I've used to express myself with. And for me, going back to the special makeup effects kind of stuff that we've touched on in the past, and my love for that, and for not necessarily theater in the sense of like Broadway or something like that, but entertainment. I want to be able to entertain people. I want people to look at something and say, oh, wow, that looks like that. And they go to eat it, and they're like, oh, my God, it's not that.
Yeah.
That is my goal. So, when it comes to these special ticketed events like this, it allows me to go wild. And I love that.
Yeah.
So the opportunity recently to have a conversation with this florist and kind of get deep into the idea more of scent and pairing that, because that's something that I fell in love with last year when partnering with this really amazing perfume company,
yeah.
Creed.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and so I want to see if we can get them in on that dinner. But anyways, details to follow. But the point was that got me really excited because, and let's create something.
Yeah.
So going back to Into the Deep, there were so many things that day, man. Like even going down to, it was interesting. It was a very polarizing event. For the folks that are listening that were there's some people that loved it. There were some people that didn't really know what to expect. And, I think after this event and other events that people have come to that we've done, it's not a party in a field with bistro lights. We're going to get into places that are hard to get into. It might be a little damp.
Yeah, this is the thing.
It might be a little interesting.
This is the message right here.
It's the experience. It's forgetting about your creature comforts. It's about having an experience that evening to totally lose yourself in the moment and the location. You're getting access to something that not everyone is going to get. And if there's hiccups along the way, it's part of the experience.
Yeah.
That is what's beautiful about it.
Mm.
Obviously, my goal is there to execute things the best that we can.
Mm-hmm.
There's no silver bullet. As I have gone over this event over and over and over again in my brain, there is no silver bullet that could have made, there's no one thing that could have made it better. I mean, there was issues from the lighting guy who didn't charge his gear, or we came in on a boat with torches where nobody saw us come in. I designed a whole soundtrack for each course, and that failed because of, many things. I mean, everyone, I think, was overwhelmed. Guests were let in 20 minutes early, and in the events industry, 20 minutes early is an hour. I mean, we had so many things going on, and that really put us far behind.
Yeah, that was hard.
It was a lot. And so, I mean, I learned a tremendous amount from that event. I know there's some people that have written me, and said how amazing it was. But to me, it wasn't, at the end of the day, it was not the experience that I wanted to deliver to people.
Yeah, so let me ask you, how did you come out of that event? What were you thinking when that event was over? What were you thinking about the future of the business, about your future, about what could come next? Yeah, like how and generally, how were you feeling?
The first couple days were I would say professionally, it was the most challenging experience I've ever gone through. 3 days afterwards, I had got an email from a prior client's parents that came to the event. And I believe that they were expecting a completely different experience, because we were very guarded about expressing what this dinner was going to be like. We didn't want to tell anybody it was going to be inside of a cave, because we wanted that to be this grand unveiling. But for people that are expecting something different, like a dinner in the field, it's going to be a little damp in there. It's going to be a little dark, but that's what it is. So they had written an honest email, which I appreciate, because I want to hear real feedback. I mean, that's the thing in this world, is we all live in our Instagrams and curate our lifestyles and everything else. Like I'm interested in real. Let's get down and dirty, and that's what I appreciate about the podcast that we're doing here.
Yeah.
It takes a lot for people to write an email or write a review or something like that,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah, it does. A lot of people would just let it slide and not say anything, or just like talk about it behind your back.
Yeah. So that was really challenging. What did I feel about the future of the business? Well, I knew that we were going to continue to do weddings, but I want us to be more than that. I mean, because it is, if you look at what the title of a caterer is, we're more than what a caterer is by definition.
Yeah, since the beginning.
Yeah, but I also want us we have the talent. There is a drive. I work with incredibly talented people, and it seems like to me such an incredible waste to waste that talent, to not utilize that talent, to not work together to create experiences for people that not only give them the most amazing evening they're ever going to have in their lives, but also something that we take away with as moments we're going to cherish the rest of our lives. I mean, look at the 2018 season, Maryland, Canada, all these events, all these memories that that you were a part of.
Yeah, they're awesome.
You didn't come to Tennessee.
No.
But like those types of things, also you didn't come to Martha's Vineyard. I wish you were there for that.
Yeah.
I mean, all 2018 was insane. It was filled with these amazing experiences.
Yeah, it's so cool, man. You've said to me before, are you about to do something that you're going to remember as being awesome at the end of the day and in the future? Or is this something that it's just going to feel like it was exhausting and not worth it? And like, I think about that all the time. And I look back at the moments that meant something and the moments that didn't. So I frame things in that way. And that's kind of how I got inspired about this past Sunday. Because it was like, is this going to be something that I'll look back on and be like, yeah, that was freaking awesome. I'm so happy I did that. Or is it just going to be another day that was draining and I took on too much for no reason and got overwhelmed?
Right.
And I know what it feels like now from like working with you, but also reflecting on before I worked with you, other experiences that I had when I really pushed hard. And so you framing it of like, is this going to be something that you remember, or is this not going to be? Like, is it going to be worth pushing this hard for, basically? and you're going to be like satisfied in a way that's deeper than having gotten paid for it,
Yeah.
or, you know,
Yep.
having whatever, made a name for yourself, or having made an image or expanded your whatever. Is it just going to be worth it for you because you're going to feel satisfied at the end of the day?
It's got to feed you.
And like when you're literally, like, this is serious stuff to think about while we're alive, man. While you are on your deathbed, if you are dying, I know that these memories are going to come to us, man. And it's like, was life worth it? And because did we create these moments? Did we go out of our way to create these moments that were amazing, And if we have a number of things that we can think back upon, the number of memories that we can think back upon that we did that were just like totally outlandish and we did it, like, then that's what made life worth living. That's what made a good life for us.
Yeah.
So anyway, your company, there have been a lot of experiences like that where I don't know, like I can only hope. I know for sure that there are some team members, and I can name them by name, who when on their deathbed are going to think back at that shit and be like, that was really cool. Like that was really hard and we did it.
Yeah, and it's not even just the good things either. There are into the deep. I mean, that's something I'm going to remember too.
Yeah.
I mean, because not only was it, there were some positive, interesting things that came from it, but there were incredible lessons that you're not going to learn other than failing. I mean, this is the other thing too, that the sort of takeaway for this stuff is that failing is not always bad if you do the right thing. You fail, do the right thing that makes sense to make it right to the best of your ability, and be humble. Don't be mad. Like, yeah, the inclination is to be nasty because you're hurt and you want to be defensive and someone's telling you did a bad job. Yeah, I mean, if they're telling you you did a bad job, now this is not across the board, but if you know you did a bad job and someone's telling you did a bad job, there's a chance you did a bad job. Just absorb that and then turn it around and say, yeah, you know what? I'm really sorry. That's not what I wanted to do. That's not the experience I wanted you to have. And what are they going to do? At that point, you've heard them. I would say more often than not, they're going to react in a way that sort of diffuses the situation.
Right.
But you learn something. At that point, it is literally like you're putting your hot, it's that old euphemism, or that old, not euphemism, but that old saying, put your hand on a hot pan on the stove, you get burnt, you won't do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, in life, I've said this so many times, but when you're a kid, your parents tell you things. Don't do this. Don't do that. If you do something wrong, well, you know what? Your parents are going to go tell you to take your hat off and go apologize to that person. As you get older, there's no one there to hold you accountable. And I think it's the duty of your friends, and sometimes even perfect strangers, to hold you accountable in an appropriate way, of course.
Yeah.
Because we need that.
We do.
We need guidance.
Yeah. We
And-
definitely do. And we
that-
need to get called on our stuff.
Yeah.
We need to get called out on it, and then we have to have the ability to let down our defenses so that we can learn the way that we need to learn, so that we can be better next time.
Exactly. That was what I was going to say, is that ultimately we are better for it. Once we get over our ego and hurt feelings and whatever else there is, that nonsense that's in there.
Yeah.
So I think today, one of the big things I want to talk about with takeaways is, we kind of touched upon very important people in our lives. I've made it a point in my life to reach out to people when I'm thinking about them, people that are really important to me. If I love them, if they mean something to me, if I'm thinking about in a moment, a time that what they taught me, either on purpose or offhand, reach out to them. I mean, that moment when I'm feeling that love, or that moment of education, reach out to that person in that moment and be open and honest with them and tell them, hey, I really appreciate what you taught me.
Yeah.
Hey, you really broke my heart, but I learned so many things from that relationship. Thank you so much. Even if you were in a relationship that ended on bad terms, say your piece, say your truth. And once you say all that with full gratitude and full meaning, I think that, even if it's not received the way that you are communicating, you said your piece, and it's on that person. Ultimately, when they're alone, they'll either choose to accept it or not, or they will. Even though they might not admit it to you, but that's okay. But those moments when you reach out to people that have meant something to you, it's incredible. It's incredible because it makes their day. And that's one of the reasons, like holidays, birthdays, Christmas, whatever, any opportunity to give a gift, to be able to tell somebody that they mean something to you and then they gave you this incredible gift that is impossible to purchase with money. My God. That
It's inspiring.
It's inspiring. It'll make them feel really great, even if just for a moment. So you owe that to them because what they gave you. So that's what I would challenge you to do. Leave us in the comments, if you're listening through YouTube, maybe some challenges that you're going through right now. And then maybe also share with us people. I mean, it doesn't have to be the people, but the experiences or lessons that you learned. I'd really be curious to read through those.
Yeah,
So
that would be
that.
inspiring. It would be inspiring to us, man.
Yeah.
Definitely do that. You can reach us in a number of different ways. Definitely leave it in the comments in YouTube. But if you want to shoot me an email, feel free. SimeonFoodNature@gmail.com. I would really love to hear from you in whatever. I'll forward it to James if that's cool with you. And we can talk about whatever it is that you said and probably get inspired by it. And maybe you'll hear about it in a future episode. Yeah,
I mean, you can either contact Simeon or contact us also through figurativelyfeasting@gmail.com. Obviously we have a plethora of different ideas and thoughts that we're constantly sharing with each other and things that come up in different podcasts. But we're also wanting to know what you guys are thinking.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What are some questions? What are some problems? What are some things you're inspired about?
Yeah.
Share with us, and we'd love to dig deeper into that topic. And
absolutely.
This is what it's about at this point in time, to connect with each other.
Yeah, connect and inspire each other.
Yeah. So give Simeon a follow over at Chef Simeon, and you can follow what I'm doing and what Heirloom Fire is doing at. So for me, my personal page is at Chef James Gopp, and then the company page is at Heirloom Fire.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
This was another good one, and just thank you for taking the time out of your day, and we look forward to connecting with you.
Yeah.
Again. Until next time. Cheers, y'all.
Peace.